Genetics don't matter nearly as much as we used to think, right? I've got some interesting literature here to back this up. This is not just like random Thomas DeLauer fun facts that I pulled out of nowhere. Okay, genetics matter, but we used to think genetics were everything when it came down to how long we would live. I remember talking to my mom and dad and them just being like, you've got it made because like your grandpa lived to be 99, like your grandma's 94, this. And I just remember being like, having a hard time thinking that that mattered, right? Because I'm just like, well, is everything just like pre-designed for us? Look, genetics matter, but the literature is suggesting that these few other things are mattering more, and they're only growing in the magnitude in which they matter more. So let's break it down. After today's video, I put a link for the best tasting protein powder I have literally ever had in my life. It is Bowmar Nutrition's protein powder. They revamped almost all their flavors under my direction, actually. I talked to Josh about it, to get rid of any sucralose or any artificial flavorings and use allulose or stevia monk fruit. So these are protein shakes that taste literally like milkshakes. Like when I say literally, I literally mean literally. Like their strawberry milkshake flavor tastes like a milkshake. They have a bananas and cream. They have a cookies and cream. They have chocolate. They have coffee protein. It's unbelievable, and I kid you not, the best tasting protein powder I've ever had. And it's so much so that like I want to have 3 or 4 a day, but that's too much. Like I'll get gassy, right? So I try to just limit it to like 1 a day. But I would literally replace meals to have this stuff. I cannot deny to you how unbelievably good they taste. So that link down below saves you a pretty darn hefty amount of money if you want to try them out. I've known Josh for a number of years, probably like 5, 6 years. We're from the same industry. I consider him a close friend. That link down below gets you a discount. Give him a shot. Study published in Human Genetics summarized this quite nicely. I'm going to read you it. I've talked about it in another video. I'm going to read it to you again though. Human family studies have indicated that a modest amount of the overall variation in adult lifespan is accounted for by genetic factors, about 20 to 30%. What this means is that as of right now, only about 20-30% of what makes us live longer is associated with genetics. The rest is associated with lifestyle. And I have some really interesting studies to help you understand this. Okay, this is really interesting because again, like as we learn more about how important lifestyle is, and we'll talk about what that is, what lifestyle is, as we learn more about the importance of it, the importance of genetics decreases. We used to think it was about 50% genetics, and then 40, now we're at 30 to 20, and it's slowly getting down to like 15. It might even get down to 5% because we start learning other things matter. What if we start factoring in the air? What if we start factoring in fluoride in our water? Like all these things we could factor in, right? But for now, we have a few lifestyle factors that have been isolated in a couple other studies. So let's break this down. There was a really wild lifestyle study published in Circulation. This study looked at 5 different lifestyle factors. Is their diet high quality? Do they exercise moderate to vigorously, 30 minutes or so per day? Have they ever smoked? Do they drink alcohol? And do they have a healthy BMI between like 18 and 24? So they wanted people to score really well there, obviously. What they found is that the higher people scored there, of course, the longer they would live. But we got actual percentage points, which is really interesting when we look at this. Out of the 42,167 people that they analyzed, there was a 74% decreased risk in all-cause mortality. 74% in people that had the best scores with those 5 things. So even just loosely looking at those 5 lifestyle factors, that accounted for a 74% reduction in all-cause mortality. That's leaving us with 26% to genetics, because those are 5 pretty big lifestyle factors. If you equate this into years, at age 50, those that were living a less healthy lifestyle, but were still doing decent, they would estimate to live another 25 to 29 years, so to the age of 75 to 79. Whereas those that scored the best on the lifestyle score testing, like on those markers, well, they were estimated to live 35 to 43 years more. So they were expected to live to 85 to 93 years old, just by influencing like these things, right? Now, the study did go into more detail with like which ones had the most impact. Like alcohol had a huge impact, exercise had a huge impact, diet had a huge impact. All these things matter, but there's some that matter more. And there's some that might matter more for one person and more for another person, depending on genetics there, right? Like some people might be impacted more by alcohol than other people. Some people might have a better impact when it comes down to exercise. Now, what's really interesting though, is if we start looking at other literature, we can figure out how to offset a bad diet through caloric restriction, whereas other literature suggests that like a bad diet needs to be offset, whereas a good diet may not need to have as much of a caloric deficit when it comes down to longevity. So that's another thing to factor into the equation too. Like if your diet's not that good, you might be able to fix it a little bit by just being in a caloric deficit. But having nutrient quality and that density is very, very, very important. So let's talk about these 5 lifestyle factors really quick and figure out how we can improve each one just with a couple different tips. Drinking alcohol. Well, best thing you could do is just cut out the alcohol. But a couple solutions for you. Switch to kava. Kava beverages are great, where there's a product called hop water. Hop water is just like water and hops along with like some nootropics like 5-HTP and stuff like that to relax you. What about smoking? Now, there is actually some evidence that suggests that turmeric has an impact on restoring some of the health benefits after smoking. So like some of the damage that can be done, particularly like lung related, turmeric's really good there. Other than that, some of the ways that you can quit smoking, well, there's evidence that suggests that caloric restriction and fasting can actually improve that. Okay, there's also some evidence that suggests that even like just nicotine gum, right? There's actually benefits to nicotine gum. There's benefits there that really, it's not that bad. Like, so if you're on the fence because you're like, I don't want to swap cigarettes for like something else, actually, believe it or not, like just having nicotine could actually be something good for your mitochondria if you're doing it in moderation. 30 minutes of vigorous exercise. How can you improve your exercise? Here's what I would suggest. Most of the literature is finding that if you do like 3 to 5 minute bouts of intervals, and you do like 4 or so of those, so 4 or 5 intervals of 3 to 5 minute sprinting or moving fast, like on a bike, whatever, that's all you need to do like 3 to 4 days per week to get to the level of exercise that is going to improve your risk of all-cause mortality significantly. So don't think of it as this giant thing you have to take on. We're talking interval it as much as you can. It's called time chunking, and it helps you with your brain, and it also helps you with your body. So chunk your exercise into 3-minute chunks and do 4 or 5 3-minute chunks 3 or 4 times per week. It allows you to wrap your head around it and also gives you the intervals that give you a really powerful impact. BMI, well, I'll just share some relatively new literature. There was a study that was looking at the ketogenic diet compared to the Mediterranean diet and wanted to see which diet would actually cause people to lose 5% of their fat mass the fastest. It was a fat loss race. What they found is that the ketogenic diet, people lost 5% of their fat mass in 1 month. The Mediterranean diet, they lost it in 3 months. So for rapid weight loss and dropping your BMI, a ketogenic diet has a lot of evidence. But people are like, I don't want to do that long term, that kind of scares me. Well, here's the good news. The ketogenic diet worked really well short term, but the Mediterranean diet actually ended up passing up the keto diet long term when it came down to weight loss and waist circumference size. So perhaps you start with 1 or 2 months of low carb, get the weight off of you, and then transition into a more Mediterranean lifestyle. That way, you can have the diet, you can also change your BMI, and we check 2 of those boxes. These quick lifestyle factors that you can change with these little simple things that I mentioned in this video can literally be the difference between a 74% reduction in all-cause mortality risk or not.